When we create a blank model, or when we have a model that already contains data that we want to update or replace, we can import our data from various sources. Here, we'll import data into a planning model that was created from a blank model. Note that when we start from a blank model, we can't import data until we've saved the model structure and the Data Management tab is available. First, we need to import the data as a draft source. We can choose from a range of data sources, or import the data from a file. If our SAP Analytics Cloud system is configured to import files from file server locations, we can choose between importing from a file server or a local system. Here, we'll import a local file. We need to navigate to and select the appropriate file, which can be in XLSX, CSV, or TXT format. Additional options display based on the data source type. In this case, we can choose to use the first row as column headers and specify the delimiter used to separate fields in the file. In this example, we'll use the default selections. When the processing is complete, we have up to 7 days to complete the data preparation steps required to integrate the data with the model, or the imported data will expire. We'll select the draft source to complete the data preparation. The file we're importing contains a large number of rows, so a message displays that the data will be sampled and any work done will be applied later to the full dataset. The data preparation process begins in card view. Here, we need to ensure that all columns from the data source, shown at the left, are mapped to the appropriate dimensions, attributes, and measures defined in the model. Most of the mapping has been done automatically. The dimensions, attributes, and measures indicators show how much of the mapping is already complete. When we mouse over the dimensions indicator, we see that the date dimension is not mapped. The time column and the date dimension also visually indicate that they're not mapped. We can map unmapped columns to measures, dimensions, or attributes by dragging and dropping them. Our dimensions and measures are now completely mapped, as required before we can save the data to the model. Note that mapping attributes is generally optional. Dimensions that contain attributes available for mapping appear stacked. We can double-click to see all the dimension attributes. Note that when the model has currency conversion enabled, we must ensure that the currency attribute is mapped before we can import the data. Also keep in mind that if our model contains public dimensions, we can't map the attributes from here. Refer to the video on importing master data to public dimensions for more details. When we've selected a card, the dimension details display in the Details panel. We'll switch to view the model details. Now we'll look at the additional mapping options available. By default, we're set to update dimensions with new values. This is relevant when we're importing new data to a model that already contains data, and means that if new dimension members are included in the dataset that were not in the original model, if there are changes to the attributes or values of existing dimension members, or if there are changes to hierarchies that were previously defined, these changes will be applied to the model. Note that dimension members and attributes are not updated for public dimensions when we select this option. In this case, we'll choose the option to convert the value symbol by account type. This matches the value symbol, positive or negative, to the account type identified in the model. This is necessary in our case because all the values in the file are stored as positive, regardless of whether they reflect income or expense accounts. The Fill Applicable Empty ID Cells with the hash value option allows us to preserve rows without a value in the Dimension ID column. These rows would otherwise be deleted. In the Import Method area, we need to choose between the Update, Append, Clean and Replace Selected Version data, and Clean and Replace Subset of Data options. The differences between these methods are relevant when we're importing to a model that already contains data. With the Update method, any values that are not already in the model will be imported, and any existing records for which the data has changed will be updated. Existing records for which the data has not changed are ignored, so duplicates will not be created. In most cases, Update is the appropriate option. With the Append option, all existing data in the model is preserved, and all data from the data source is imported. Note that any records that are present both in the model and the data source are duplicated and may result in inaccurate values. With the clean and replace method, the records for the selected version are deleted from the model and replaced by those from the data source, while preserving the master data, such as dimension members. Note that any records for the selected version that were saved to the model but are no longer present in the data source will be lost. The clean and replace subset of data option is similar, but lets us replace the data just for specific dimensions. Note that we can choose to import the data to an existing version, such as actuals, or to a new version if we want. For example, we might want to create a forecast version. Multiple versions are supported for all categories other than actuals. We also need to specify a name for the version. Finally, we can click Add Scope to specify one or more dimensions to replace. Any data from the source that doesn't match the defined scope won't be replaced. In this case, we'll use the update method. Now we'll validate the data to see if any quality issues are introduced by the additional rows in the full dataset. The validation is complete. We're ready to finish mapping. We've successfully imported the data for the actuals to our model. To import data to another version, such as forecast, we can repeat the import process and choose the desired version. Rather than importing a separate dataset for each version in our model, we could include a version column in the dataset along with the appropriate measure values for each version. This method works for both planning and analytic models, even though analytic models don't contain a version dimension. Because our dataset includes a version column, the import method area doesn't let us specify the version and category we're importing. However, when we select the version dimension itself, we can use the Map Versions feature to map the values for each category to the appropriate version. In this case, the correct versions are identified automatically. The rest of the import process is the same as in the previous example. Thanks for watching.